The moment the 8-ball disappeared into the corner pocket, I realized I had just lost a game of pool to the one woman in the office who knew exactly how to break through every wall I had spent 3 years building. What she did next surprised me even more. She put the cue down, looked at me with tears gathering in her eyes, and quietly admitted that the kiss she had joked about was never really what she wanted. What she wanted was to know whether I was capable of letting someone close again. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change a person's life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who may need it, and subscribe to our channel so our community can keep sharing stories that remind us there is still good in people. My name is Everett Callahan, and for most of my 36 years, I had been good at keeping people at a safe distance. At work, I was reliable, polite, and almost painfully predictable. I arrived early, finished my assignments, helped whoever needed help, and left the building before anyone could ask personal questions. My coworkers knew what kind of coffee I drank, what department I worked in, and that I hated crowded elevators. They did not know why I never talked about weekends, why I avoided photographs, or why I always looked uncomfortable whenever someone mentioned relationships. Then there was Marlowe, the one person who seemed determined to notice everything I tried to hide. Marlowe worked 2 desks away from me in the client relations department, and she had a way of making an ordinary morning feel slightly brighter. She was 34, sharp-witted without being cruel, confident without needing attention, and possessed the strange ability to remember tiny details other people forgot. If someone mentioned having a doctor's appointment, Marlowe remembered to ask about it. If a coworker looked exhausted, she quietly left a coffee on their desk. If someone made a mistake, she corrected it without making them feel stupid. I admired those qualities from a distance, though I never told her. One warm Thursday afternoon, our office emptied earlier than usual because the company had arranged a casual employee gathering at a small recreation center nearby. Most people were excited about the food, the outdoor patio, and the chance to escape the office. I had planned to make an excuse and go home, but Marlowe caught me near the elevator and asked if I was seriously going to spend another beautiful afternoon hiding inside my apartment. I laughed and told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She smiled and said she had been watching me for months, and I was terrible at pretending I didn't enjoy being around people. Before I could answer, she challenged me to a game of pool. I told her I hadn't played since college. She said that made it more interesting. I reminded her that I was probably going to lose. She leaned against the pool table and said she liked confident opponents, not nervous ones. Then she picked up a cue, broke the rack with a sharp crack, and sank 2 stripes before I had even chosen my first shot. The game became surprisingly competitive. Marlowe teased me whenever I missed, celebrated dramatically whenever she sank a difficult shot, and somehow managed to make me laugh more in 40 minutes than I had laughed in weeks. I started relaxing. I stopped thinking about work. I stopped thinking about the past. For a little while, I was simply Everett, standing beneath the afternoon sunlight pouring through the recreation center windows, trying to beat a woman who was clearly enjoying herself far too much. With only the 8-ball remaining, Marlowe studied the table and then looked at me with a mischievous smile. She pointed toward the final ball and made a playful challenge that if she sank it, I owed her a kiss. I laughed and told her she was being ridiculous. She said she was only trying to make the game interesting. I reminded her that she was already winning. She told me that was exactly why she deserved to make the rules. I shook my head, smiling despite myself, and told her to take the shot. She lined up carefully, but the ball stopped just short of the pocket. I laughed, and she groaned dramatically. Then it was my turn. I stared at the table and realized I had an easy shot. Yet instead of feeling victorious, I felt something unexpected. I was nervous. Not because of the game, but because Marlowe was standing beside me, watching me with an expression that had suddenly become quieter. I sank the 8-ball, and she applauded slowly before congratulating me. I joked that she had escaped owing me a kiss. She smiled and said she was glad I had won. There was something in her voice that made the joke disappear between us. For the first time, I wondered whether the challenge had been less about flirting and more about seeing whether I would even allow myself to be playful with someone. We left the recreation center together in the bright afternoon, walking toward the parking lot. Marlowe asked me why I seemed uncomfortable whenever anything became personal. I tried to dismiss the question, but she didn't push. Instead, she told me something about herself. She had spent years taking care of everyone around her because she had convinced herself that being needed was the same thing as being loved. Her previous relationship had ended badly, and afterward she realized she had spent so much time trying to save another person that she had forgotten to save herself. She said she was learning not to chase people who were emotionally unavailable. I asked whether she considered me emotionally unavailable. She smiled sadly and said she didn't know yet. That answer stayed with me. The truth was that I had once been very different. 3 years earlier, I had been engaged to a woman named Celia. We had been together for 5 years, and I believed our future was certain. Then, during the final months before our wedding, my younger brother suffered a serious accident. My family fell apart under the pressure, and I became consumed with helping my parents, managing hospital visits, and trying to keep everything together. Celia tried to stay beside me, but I became distant and angry at the world. Eventually, she told me she couldn't build a marriage with someone who had disappeared emotionally. She ended our engagement. I blamed her for leaving when I needed her most. It took me years to understand that she had been drowning too, and I had never noticed. After she left, my brother recovered physically, but my relationship with my family changed forever. I carried guilt, resentment, and regret until they became part of my personality. I convinced myself that keeping people at a distance was safer than ever having the chance to disappoint them again. Marlowe learned this gradually, not because I told her everything at once, but because she noticed the little things. She noticed when certain conversations made me quiet. She noticed that I never wore the old silver ring I kept in my desk drawer. She noticed that whenever someone mentioned weddings, I found a reason to leave the room. But instead of demanding explanations, she simply gave me space. That was what made her different. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't tell me I needed to move on. She just stayed kind. Over the following weeks, our friendship deepened. We ate lunch together. We walked to the coffee shop across the street. Sometimes she would stop by my desk and leave a ridiculous note beside my keyboard when she knew I was having a difficult morning. I started telling her things I had never told anyone at work. She learned about my brother, my broken engagement, and the guilt I carried. I learned about her childhood, her fear of being abandoned, and the difficult relationship she had with her mother. Neither of us called what was happening romance. Maybe we were both afraid of giving it a name. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Our company had organized a volunteer event at a community center, and Marlowe and I spent several hours helping distribute donated groceries to families. At first, I expected the work to be routine. Instead, one elderly man thanked us so sincerely for a small box of food that I felt something crack inside me. He held my hand and told me that kindness was sometimes the only thing keeping people from giving up. I thought about all the years I had spent believing I was protecting myself when I was really punishing myself. Marlowe noticed the tears in my eyes but didn't say anything. She simply stood beside me. On the drive back that afternoon, I finally told her the truth. I said I was afraid that if I let myself care about someone again, I would eventually fail them. I admitted that I still blamed myself for losing Celia, even though years had passed. I told Marlowe that sometimes I felt like there was something permanently broken inside me. She listened until I finished. Then she told me that broken things were not always worthless. Some things became more beautiful after they had been repaired because the person doing the repairing learned how precious they were. I didn't know what to say. Then she reached over and squeezed my hand. There was no dramatic kiss. No perfect romantic moment. Just two people sitting in a car in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, both realizing that they had found someone who understood the parts of them they usually hid. But happiness rarely arrives without testing whether we are ready to keep it. A few days later, I overheard a coworker joking that Marlowe had probably only been spending time with me because she enjoyed watching me struggle to understand flirting. Another coworker mentioned that she had recently been talking to someone outside the office. I didn't ask Marlowe about it. Instead, my old fears returned. I became distant. I stopped joining her for lunch. I answered her messages with short replies. When she asked whether something was wrong, I told her I was busy. She knew I was lying. For almost 2 weeks, we became strangers again. I hated every minute of it, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. Then one afternoon, Marlowe found me alone near the pool table at the recreation center. She had come there for another company event, and apparently someone had mentioned that I was practicing. She walked over and placed a cue on the table. She reminded me of our first game. I smiled weakly and told her I remembered. Then she told me something I will never forget. She said the problem wasn't that I was afraid of being hurt. Everyone was afraid of being hurt. The problem was that I was making other people pay for what someone else had done to me. She said I was asking her to prove she wouldn't leave while refusing to give her any reason to believe I would stay. Her words hurt because they were true. I finally admitted that I had been jealous after hearing she might be seeing someone. She looked surprised, then told me there was no one. The person I had heard about was her cousin's friend, someone she had been helping through a difficult divorce. She said she had intentionally stayed away from dating because she didn't want another relationship built on loneliness. Then she looked at the pool table and smiled. She said we could play again, but this time there would be no ridiculous promises, no games designed to hide what we were feeling, and no pretending. I agreed. We played slowly that afternoon. Neither of us cared who won. We talked between shots about fear, forgiveness, family, and the strange ways people sometimes sabotage the very happiness they want most. Eventually, Marlowe had the final shot. She looked at me, smiled, and sank the 8-ball cleanly. She won. But instead of asking for the kiss she had joked about weeks earlier, she simply put down the cue. I asked why she wasn't collecting her prize. She told me because the real prize was watching me finally stop running. That was when I understood what she had been trying to teach me all along. Love wasn't a reward for being perfect. It wasn't something you earned by never making mistakes. It was something two imperfect people built by choosing honesty over fear, forgiveness over resentment, and courage over comfort. I apologized for shutting her out. I apologized for assuming the worst. Most importantly, I apologized for making her feel responsible for proving that she wasn't the person who had hurt me before. She accepted my apology, but she also told me forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant deciding that the past would no longer control the future. I asked whether there was still a chance for us. She smiled and said there had been a chance all along, but now I finally seemed brave enough to take it. Months later, we returned to that same recreation center. The afternoon sunlight filled the room, and the old pool table looked exactly as it had that first day. Marlowe challenged me to another game. This time, when she reached the 8-ball, she deliberately missed. I laughed and asked whether she had forgotten how to play. She told me she had learned something important: sometimes you don't need to win the game to win the moment. I sank the final ball, and we walked outside together beneath a bright afternoon sky. There was no grand declaration, no perfect cinematic ending, and no promise that life would suddenly become easy. There were still difficult days ahead. We would disagree. We would misunderstand each other. We would carry our old scars into our new relationship. But we had learned something more valuable than perfection. We had learned that love could be a place where two people were allowed to grow. Before we reached the parking lot, Marlowe stopped and looked at me. She reminded me of that first pool game and laughed about the kiss she had once tried to bargain for. Then she told me that she didn't want a kiss because she had won a bet. She wanted one because we had both finally stopped pretending we didn't care. This time, I didn't hesitate. And as I held her, I realized that the greatest surprise wasn't that someone had finally loved me. It was that after years of believing I was too damaged to love anyone properly, I had discovered that healing didn't require becoming the person I used to be. Sometimes healing meant becoming someone new. Someone who stayed. Someone who forgave. Someone who finally understood that a second chance wasn't a reward for having a perfect past. It was a gift we gave ourselves when we decided the past no longer deserved to control our future. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And before you go, leave a meaningful comment telling us this. Have you ever pushed someone away because you were afraid they might hurt you, and what did that experience teach you about forgiveness, trust, or second chances? Sometimes one honest comment can remind another person that they are not alone. Because sometimes the person standing across from us isn't asking us to win. Sometimes they're simply waiting to see if we're brave enough to stop running.